Austin Kaplan, employment, civil rights whistleblower attorney. Progress Texas is more important than ever. By God, we need to band together and fight back and make sure that our beliefs and values, which are popular, which are critically important to human rights, to people's rights, to civil rights, are being respected and are moving forward in a positive direction for everyone. One election does not define us. Worry not. We are going to fight back. We are going to fight together. We are going to work together, and we are going to win. And by win, I mean we are going to have a society that respects people, that respects workers, that respects people's personal choices, that respects their bodies. And we're going to make that happen together.
It's Friday, March 21st, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Starting with the program note here, we've been doing our best to amplify HB 32, the bill filed by Dallas area Republican Representative Angie Chen Button, which would severely undermine the rights of Texas renters in situations where their landlords want to kick them out of their homes. We have an update from Mark Melton and Stuart Campbell of the Dallas Eviction Advocacy Center, who have been lobbying hard at the Capitol against this legislation, which again would undermine the legal standing of over half of Texans, those who rent their homes, to keep those homes. Coming up at the end of the Daily Dispatch this morning. Stick around for that as we wrap up today. Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and Attorney General Ken Paxton were all present at the White House yesterday as Donald Trump signed an executive order directing the Secretary of Education, that's currently Linda McMahon, whose qualifications for the job include co-founding World Wrestling Entertainment, to take all legal means to shut down the U.S. Department of Education. I wish I could stop after that rather incredible sentence. Why the enthusiasm from Texas's top elected officials when the Lone Star State is one of the biggest beneficiaries of federal education funding, over $12 billion in 2023? Promise you private schools will be okay. Despite his insistence to the contrary, Governor Abbott has made clear that private school windfalls via taxpayer-funded vouchers are his number one priority at the moment. Matthew Choi and Stephen Simpson at the Texas Tribune cite Zeph Capo, labor union president of the Texas American Federation of Teachers. From a statement, Capo says, quote, "It makes perfect sense for Governor Greg Abbott to be on hand for the dismantling of the Department of Education. It has been the only governmental entity holding his administration accountable for guaranteeing parents and students' rights to a free and fair education," unquote. And without that obstacle, Texas Republicans will have even more leeway to degrade and destroy public schools in our state. Carrie Heath and John Moritz at the Austin American-Statesman elaborate that much like reproductive rights, Donald Trump points to Greg Abbott and Texas as his example of what a splendid idea it is to return the job of education to the states. And to be clear, there's almost nowhere to go but up for Texas in this department. We rank 29th of the 50 states in D.C. for education quality, according to a U.S. News and World Report study from last year. Maybe posting the 10 Commandments in our classrooms and lacing our history lessons with Bible stories will do the trick. Keep in mind that what starts here changes the world. Red states across the country will blindly follow Texas's lead. And with no federal education oversight in the way, who knows what's next? Texas is also becoming nationally recognized for measles. As we mentioned this week, if the current measles outbreak, which is proving persistent, continues for a few more months, all of these United States, the entire country, will lose our status as a nation that has eliminated measles. But worse than that, Texas is now looking more and more likely to end up the epicenter of an eventual national measles epidemic. More from Stephen Simpson at the Trib, who says public health experts are sounding the alarm that our state is actively complicit in the spread of measles due to our failure to constrain anti-vax misinformation. Glenn Finley, chair of the Department of Pediatrics at Texas Tech University, says the rapid spread of measles, coupled with state officials coddling of vaccine exemptions fueled by science denial, quote, demonstrates that this policy puts the community, the county, and surrounding states at risk because of how contagious this disease is. We are running the risk of threatening global stability, unquote. And yes, as scary as that sounds. The insanity here is probably best viewed by the case of the parents of the West Texas child who became the first American to die of measles in a decade a few weeks back. Gustav Killander at The Independent writes that the young Mennonite couple in Gaines County, whose 5 unvaccinated kids all contracted the disease, say that despite losing one of their children, they continue to urge others to avoid vaccinations. This is from an interview that was produced and distributed by the anti-vaccine disinformation org Children's Health Defense, which up until just a few months ago was led by current Trump administration Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Congressional Texas Democrats Lloyd Doggett, Mark Veazey, and Lizzie Fletcher have written to the Federal Centers for Disease Control to ask what exactly in the hell they're doing to help control the Texas measles outbreak. We presume they mean what the CDC is doing beyond shipping extra doses of vitamin A to Texas. Elon Musk's Doge detail have cut 750 jobs at the CDC lately. And there's a solid segue. Let's talk about the Tesla Cybertruck, produced right here in Austin at Tesla's Gigafactory, which beyond being the douchiest vehicle in automotive history, is also demonstrably poorly designed and built to the point of potentially being a downright death trap. Anthony Cuthbertson at The Independent writes that Tesla has been forced to recall all Cybertrucks, every single one it has ever sold, all 46,100 of them, as safety regulators have determined that the glue used to attach one of its stainless steel panels is too weak to hold that exterior panel that runs along the left and right side of the windscreen in place, allowing it to detach while the vehicle is in motion and creating a hazard for both the driver and cars nearby. The adhesive has been found vulnerable to environmental embrittlement. In other words, it doesn't stand up to the weather in Texas or anywhere else, really. Even scarier than that, this story out of California. Jose Formoso at the Oakland side tells of 3 college students who were burned to death in a Cybertruck that had crashed and caught fire last fall. Seems the doors on Tesla cars rely on electric power to disengage electronic latches, according to Adam Cook, a Detroit robotics and car engineer. And there are mounting reports of people who have died inside those vehicles because they couldn't exit a damaged car or because bystanders could not open the doors to free them. That's what happened in California. A young man named Matt Reardon managed to break a window from this burning Cybertruck and pull one of his friends out, but couldn't get the doors to open, and watched as his other 3 friends in the Cybertruck burned to death. The details of this incident are horrifying, but necessary to read if you're still considering buying one of these cars. A big day at the Capitol on Monday as Equality Texas, the ACLU, the Human Rights Campaign, Lambda Legal, and the Texas Freedom Network convene in Austin for their All In for Equality Advocacy Day. Meetup is Monday morning at the Paramount Theater on Congress Avenue at 9 a.m. They'll be holding trainings on legislative visits. That's a great resource. Then a short march to the south steps of the Capitol for a 12 noon rally on Monday. RSVP is required. Bus transportation from Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston is available, and lunch is being provided too. See the show notes for that RSVP link and the full details, and we hope to see you on Monday in Austin. March is Women's History Month, and Progress Texas Advocacy Associate Tatum Owens has put together a great rundown in celebration of the enormous breakthroughs the Texas women have accomplished, as well as an analysis of why Texas remains among the worst states in which to live for women, plus a full list of Women's History Month events happening across the state. See that rundown at progresstexas.org. Our mission here at Progress Texas is to counter the conservative disinformation machine, but they far outmatch us in funding. Oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups spend a lot of money keeping their audiences in the dark. If you've come to appreciate the light that we shine on important political news in Texas on a daily ongoing basis, please know that our regular everyday listeners form a key component of our funding. If that's you, we could use your support as a monthly contributor, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Hannah Banks, Sharon Guild-Stitt, and Stephanie Evans, all of whom are on the team. We appreciate all of y'all. San Antonio friends, Progress Texas is Alamo City bound for the first time in a while for a live podcast taping and fundraising party. This happens on Tuesday, May the 6th. We look forward to a long overdue and fun get-together with y'all at our Party for Progress. Mark that date, Tuesday, May the 6th, and keep it here for more details. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Friday, March 21st, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you again on Monday, and as promised, an update on HB 32, which if you're a renter, if it passes, will severely undermine your rights when it comes to your landlord's opportunities to kick you out of your house. Mark Melton and Stuart Campbell of the Dallas Eviction Advocacy Center. Okay, so some of us think that we, are doing such a huge service by taking a 10-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute drive to the Capitol when we have to take care of something during the legislature. But folks like Mark Melton and Stuart Campbell, who are with the Dallas Eviction Advocacy Center, have been driving back and forth from DFW to take care of business. So first of all, hats off to you guys, Mark and Stuart. We'll remind our listeners that we have been talking over the last few days about HB 32, a bill that was put in place in order to give large corporate landlords an opportunity to make it easier for themselves to evict tenants, basically by speeding up that process, taking away a lot of the due process that renters in Texas, which is over half of us, have come to rely on if we get into a scrape with our landlords. And so Mark and Stuart are actually on their way back to Dallas as we're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. Guys, thanks, first of all, for just all the road time that you're logging in trying to beat back this horrible legislation. And we understand that there is an update. Mark is on the camera first here. So, Mark, tell us basically what's going on. What have you guys been working on the last couple of days?
Well, after the hearing last week, Chairman Leach made it pretty clear that he wanted the parties, or the stakeholders rather, to get together and see if there was some kind of compromise bill that could be put forth for the committee to pass out onto the House floor. There were some efforts. We did a draft of changes to the eviction code in Texas and sent them around. The Texas Apartment Association summarily ignored them, it seems, and sent back a red line of their original bill. That in some ways attempted to make some of the things slightly better, but on the whole made most of the provisions even worse than they were in the original draft. And so at this point, Chair Button's office has our comments and TA's comments, and we're told that they're going to read them all and try to revise the bill and come up with a committee substitute to put back in front of the committee. It's unclear whether we're going to get to see a draft of that in advance so that all sides could comment again, or if they're just going to throw something out there and vote on it. So at this point, we're spending a lot of time talking to all the members of the committee on both the Republican and the Democratic side to try and convince them that due process matters in this country and that it's a bipartisan issue, and that they should all be sure that if they're going to pass something out of this committee, it does not include violations of due process, and that it doesn't shut down legal aid operations across the state of Texas for renters.
Do we feel like we're getting anywhere with the public, or do you guys have any indication if there have been any kind of outcry from people who have heard about this bill? Frequently when something like this goes through, the folks who are trying to push it through rely on the public not to notice until it's already been completed. And of course, that's why these, ongoing conversations have been happening with Progress Texas, is to try to alert folks. Stuart, have you heard much about, in terms of, has there been any sort of the type of outcry that we would hope would be coming from the voters?
Well, there's been a large uptick in the media. That's in large part thanks to you, Chris, and Mark being interviewed so much, which I really appreciate. But there's one thing that I really want to focus on this bill. What was recently proposed as an alternative that changed it and made it worse, and that's what Mark just mentioned, is that this would completely defund eviction defense in the state of Texas for poor people, for legal aid or any pro bono service provider. It even goes further than that. The most recent language that was offered up would make it impossible for any organization that receives any public funds, whether it's a church, a domestic violence crisis center, a community center, a law school clinic, any publicly funded organization that provides any information or advice would be defunded from their projects on this. So it goes way beyond the initial filing here.
So I don't really see how in the world that could possibly apply to the original story that they were telling about this legislation, which was that it was about making it harder to squat on unoccupied real estate ostensibly. Why would they be undercutting, or what's their reasoning, I guess, devil's advocate, what's the reasoning for, undercutting people who are simply trying to inform tenants of what their rights are?
So, this clearly is not about squatting, first of all. So when when we sent our comments back, we actually drafted a provision that would have dealt with this water specifically. When TA responded, they did not include that in their draft. So even with the language draft form, they still didn't. I think we can draw that conclusion at this point that it's not about scholars.
Right.
Why do they want to defund legal aid or stop people from helping? Well, because prior to COVID, there was very little help, right? There was limited funds, limited resources. And so most evictions happened without lawyers intervening. And it was really a rubber stamp process. The evictions just sailed through without objection, and landlords could evict at will. Once COVID happened and more money was available and more lawyers showed up, that rubber stamp process went away. And so in Dallas County, for example, we represent about 65% of all tenants that show up for their hearings in the entire county. So the majority. And the rubber stamp has really gone away in Dallas County. And I think we're clearly a target on this, that they want to get rid of the lawyers. So if you can defund the lawyers and get them out of the courthouses, and you can keep the tenants out of the courthouses where they typically meet us by having summary evictions that don't include a trial or a hearing, there's no opportunity for the tenant and the lawyer to get together so that their rights can be protected. And that will allow the landlords to just railroad whoever they want, whenever they want. And that is the entire purpose of this bill.
I mean, it's kind of blowing my mind that this has not been a bigger thing for the public. This affects over half of Texans of either party or people who don't pay attention to politics. Maybe that's the problem. We will do our best to keep on spreading the word. Again, we really appreciate you guys going to all the trouble that you have to try and beat this legislation back. It to me seems on its face, and tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm being apoplectic here, seems on its face as literally turning landlords into little kings, into being able to just completely, roll over anyone that they don't want to have in their rental unit anymore for whatever reason it might be. This seems like the granting of that sort of control over renters' lives by landlords. Am I missing something? Am I being dramatic?
No, you're not at all. And as a practical matter, that's exactly what happens. So even though there are words on a page that may look like they might provide some limited protection, when you get out into the real world, most of the evictions are happening to largely unsophisticated, poor people that really don't understand the law, don't have the resource to protect themselves.
Right.
And they wouldn't be able to avail themselves of the protection, even if it existed. And that's exactly what they're counting on. So they have put the procedures in there so that the tenants likely will not take advantage of them, and they can just boot them at will.
So are we still talking about HB 32? I know there were a couple of other bills that became in circulation. When we have people call their lawmakers to voice their concerns about this, are we still talking HB 32, or are there others that we need to be talking about?
I think this is the primary one. This is the big daddy that is going to cause all the problems. Now, there is a Senate companion bill, which is Senate Bill 38. That just today they announced that there will be a hearing on that bill on Monday at 9 a.m. And so when you call your state senator or your state rep, we're talking about House Bill 32 and Senate Bill 38. These are priority bills for the leadership in both the House and the Senate. And so they want to push these through, and it's going to take a lot of loud voices to stop this.
So once again, to our listeners, if you happen to be a renter, or if you're not, if you know people who are renters, again, over half of us are, this is something that very, very directly undermines a really, really basic right and freedom that we all enjoy and have for time immemorial. This is quite unprecedented in terms of undermining the security that you have in your very home. And I don't know what could be more basic or fundamental than that. So once again, HB 32 is what you want to call your representative, whoever that might be, regardless of their party, Democrat or Republican. Let them know you want them to vote against HB 32. Mark Melton and Stuart Campbell logging a whole bunch of time up and down I-35, which itself is an arduous task. And so, guys, hats off once again for your hard work, and appreciate what you do and doing our best to get the word out.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll be back in Austin on Sunday night to be ready for Monday morning.